The Golden Stool. How the Asante built power, wealth, and identity, and why it was worth a war. There are moments in history when power is not defined by borders, armies, or flags, but by belief. In the forests of West Africa, more than 300 years ago, an empire was bound together not by paper or stone, but by a sacred object, a stool covered in gold, never touched by the ground, never sat upon by any human being. The British would later demand it. The Asante would go to war to protect it. This is the story of the Golden Stool and of a kingdom that understood something many empires did not, that sovereignty begins in the soul. The birth of the Golden Stool. Since the founding of the Akan state of Asante at the end of the 17th century, stools had played a vital role in political life. Across Akan societies, chiefs sat upon ceremonial wooden stools that symbolized their authority and the well-being of their people. These stools were believed to contain the sunsum, the spirit and soul of the community. But in the 1690s, as King Osei Tutu sought to bind together multiple Akan chiefdoms into a single kingdom through his chief priest, he introduced something unprecedented, a golden stool known as the Sika Dwa. This was no throne. According to tradition, it descended from the sky and landed on Osei Tutu's lap. The king's high priest declared, "This is the sunsum of a new Asante nation. If it is ever captured or destroyed, then just as a man sickens and dies without his soul, so will the Asante lose their power and disintegrate into chaos." From that moment, the Golden Stool became the embodiment of Asante sovereignty. Encased in gold, hung with bells, shaded by its own palanquin, and attended by its own acolytes, it was accorded its own chair of state. No one, not even the king, sat upon it. The stool did not belong to the Asantehene. The Asantehene belonged to the stool, an empire at its height. By the early 19th century, the Asante Empire had become one of the most powerful states in West Africa. Its inner core consisted of 6 metropolitan chiefdoms centered on Kumasi, surrounded by an outer ring of Akan-speaking provinces and tributary states stretching from the northern savannas to the southern coastal ports. A network of great roads radiated from Kumasi, binding the empire together militarily, economically, and administratively. Asante was, at heart, a military society. It could field up to 80,000 men, loyal to the Asantehene. But royal power was not absolute. The king ruled alongside an inner council of advisors and a national assembly of chiefs. There was no single royal family. Succession was matrilineal, and the Asantehene was chosen by the Queen Mother and senior chiefs from among eligible candidates. A system designed to limit destructive succession disputes. Yet Asante rule was not gentle. Executions were frequent. Ritual human sacrifice formed part of state ceremonies. Power was maintained mainly through loyalty and broad rule, but also through fear, gold, bureaucracy, and wealth. What sustained the empire was gold. Asante wealth came from agriculture and extensive gold mining. Much of this gold was produced by slave labor. Some mines were owned directly by the Asantehene. Others belonged to chiefs who paid taxes to the state. Peasants washed alluvial gold from rivers. Wars gold dust became currency. Every man of substance carried scales and gold weights. Even everyday items, bananas included, were priced in gold dust. The empire was administered by a sophisticated bureaucracy, often employing literate Muslim officials from the north, valued for their skills rather than their lineage. Merit, not birth alone, opened doors in Asante administration. This blend of military power, bureaucratic efficiency, and mineral wealth made Asante formidable and dazzling. European encounter, Bowditch in Kumasi. In 1817, a British official named Thomas Bowditch set out from Cape Coast Castle to make contact with King Osei Bonsu after crossing the coastal plains of Fante and 3 weeks of travel through dense tropical rainforest. He arrived in Kumasi, 140 miles inland. Some 30,000 people gathered to witness his arrival. Bowditch described a city that astonished him. Wide-named streets, banyan trees carefully planted, houses with high-pitched thatched roofs, elaborate plasterwork, and ornaments of animals and birds. Some homes even had lavatories flushed with boiling water. Streets were swept daily. The palace complex covered 5 acres, housing treasuries, administrative offices, royal chambers, and the king's harem. Passing through vast crowds of courtiers shaded by huge umbrellas, dressed in fine kente cloth, and adorned with gold, Bowditch was introduced to King Osei Bonsu. He later wrote, "His manners were majestic, yet courteous." After months of negotiation, the king signed a treaty to promote trade with the British at Cape Coast Castle. From trade to conflict. That treaty marked the beginning of a long, fraught relationship between the Asante Kingdom and the British Empire, one defined by trade and diplomacy, but also by war, coercion, and humiliation. As European power expanded inland, misunderstandings hardened into demands. At the turn of the 20th century, a British official made a catastrophic error. He demanded that the Golden Stool be surrendered. To the British, it was a symbol to be possessed. To the Asante, it was the soul of the nation. What followed became known as the War of the Golden Stool. For the British, it was another colonial conflict. For Asante, it was the final stand for independence. Closing reflection and lessons. The story of the Golden Stool teaches us something enduring. Power is not only enforced, it is believed. Wealth is not only accumulated, it is organized. And sovereignty is not merely political, it is spiritual and cultural. Asante understood that identity could outlast empire. And that is why, long after armies faded and treaties collapsed, the Golden Stool still endures. History does not only tell us what happened, it shows us what mattered. If you value life accounts that draws lessons for today, subscribe to Lessons Untold. Lessons Untold, relax, review, and reflect.